Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Darkness. Gather round and try to stay in the light. Some of the others from the dark aren't quite as civil as I am, and dismemberment is not a good way to go. I'd hate to have to clean up the mess. I was raised by a monster from polonium poisoning. My earliest memory was watching the movie Monsters, Inc. and thinking it was the coolest that my mother looked like Sully. That, of course, wasn't her real form, but the one she used to avoid both scaring me and putting too much strain on her body. You could say she was somewhat of a shapeshifter, but she couldn't choose freely what to look like. We lived on a small rural property with high walls to avoid catching the eyes of intruders and passerby. Just me, Mother Sully, that's what I called her, and our chickens. I had told everyone at school that my mother looked like Sully. Of course, my teacher, worrying about my wild imagination, contacted my mother, whose human name was Amelia, to check if everything was okay. My mom drove her old Chevy truck all the way to the school and assured Mrs. Bennington that everything was fine. I was just a very fun, imaginative little boy. She even showed my teacher a fur coat that kinda looked like Sully, and they shared a good laugh about it. Mother Sully had to sleep for 3 days straight after spending just 3 hours in her human form. I don't know what other side effects she suffered as a result of using her human form. The day I turned 9, she decided I was old enough to know my backstory.
Nicholas,
She sat me on her long, emerald furry blue leg.
you are a very good boy, and I love being your mother. But I know you have a lot of questions. Questions about how the other mothers look and how I look.
I love that you're unique, Mom, I remember telling her. She smiled and stroked my hair with her big soft hand. She looked comical and cozy, like someone wearing a giant bear suit.
That's great, Nick. I'm very happy to know that.
Her voice was deep and thunderous, but always carried a gentle tone.
There are a few things that I want to let you know. The first one is that this is not my true form. I am really monstrous, not something out of a child's movie.
Like something from a horror movie, then? I asked, my eyes sparkling with curiosity.
Yes, something like that. I will never show you that form. I don't even know if a human brain can comprehend it. That form is evil. I do my best to control it.
It's okay.
The second thing is that we don't sell our chickens. They disappear because I have to eat them raw. I am a monster after all.
She looked deeply into my eyes.
But that doesn't mean I will ever hurt you. I can keep everything under control. Do you trust me?
Of course, Mom, I exclaimed. She never even raised her voice at me. Mother Sully was nothing but caring, calm, and trustworthy. I loved her so much.
I'm glad to know that too, sweetie. The last thing is that I'm sorry you'll never meet your real parents. They died in an accident on this very road, and you were the only one to survive. Your mother was holding you, protecting you.
She sighed.
I kept you for myself because you were a beautiful baby, and Mom was very lonely in here. I assume you have no living relatives because nobody ever claimed you. I would be happy to have them visit you if they ever do show up, but you are my son, and I won't let you go.
And you're my mom, and I don't want to live with anyone else, I assured her. I never tried to look for details about my parents or find out if I had blood relatives, because all I needed was my mama monster. She baked me a beautiful cake that day. I lived a simple, happy life with her. During my teenage years, sometimes it bothered me that I couldn't bring my friends over, and I even felt ashamed by my mother's condition. But something always reminded me that she was the best family I could ask for. My friends and classmates had broken homes, inattentive parents, aggressive drunk fathers. I had a mother that looked like Sully from Monsters, Inc. Once or twice, I doubted my mother, like any teenager does. What if she loses control? What if she has to feed on humans instead of chickens? But I knew that I could rest assured. She was so caring that she always spared the chickens I grew attached to, no matter how many more she had to buy to feed on. As the years passed, I was still a creative boy, despite being shy. I only had a few friends, but my classmates were always asking me to draw something for them. That's probably why I attracted Lacey's attention. I can't think of anything else. Lacey was one of those rare girls that are popular both for being beautiful and kind. She had been my crush since forever, but I decided to leave it in the back of my head and not act on it. Instead, I focused on creating art. My drawings depicted her angelic face almost every day, growing better and prettier as I did my best to perfect them. "Is that me?" she asked, taking the paper from my desk. My stomach sank. I was too concentrated to notice her coming closer. "I'm so sorry, Lacey. I use people I know as models, but if you don't like it, I'll stop." I was able to assemble an apology as my face went purple from forgetting to breathe. The drawing wasn't unflattering or naughty, but I lied. She was the only one I ever used as a model. She smiled, so heavenly. "I love it. Can you show me whenever you draw me?" Of course I could. I had depicted her as princesses, warriors, and good witches, but my common sense screamed to me that I shouldn't let Lacey know that I already had over 100 sketches of her. I took it slow, and we became friends. Then Valentine's. We were 16 when we started dating. Lacey expanded my world. She had had a few boyfriends, one of which turned out to be, according to her, a dangerous asshole. She had traveled to see beaches, canyons, and parks, while I had never left our small town. And she had a lot of plans for the future, from going to college to buying her first house. I didn't know what I would do after school. Probably get a job and stick around. I still don't know what she saw in me. She was so perfect, and I am so common. When I felt like our relationship was serious, I told Mother Sully all about Lacey. She was overjoyed to know that I had found such a beautiful and nice sweetheart.
"You know, the human form is a huge strain on my body, but it's worth it,"
she prefaced.
"I really want to meet your girlfriend. Would you like to invite her to dinner next week?"
I would. I was really self-conscious about our home being too modest and full of hens, but I was very excited about the idea. I knew Mom couldn't afford to use her human form for something that wasn't strictly necessary. Still, I always wanted to invite my friends over just to hang out. "Can my friends come too?" I asked. I knew Lacey would feel more at ease if our friends were there for the big occasion, especially because Victoria had become her bestie.
"Sure, Nick. I would love to finally meet your friends. I'm really sorry I couldn't do that sooner."
During all these years, I had told people at my school that my mother had bad anxiety, so no one could come to our house. Both Lacey and my friends were very concerned about this, so they understood why finally being able to invite them over was so important to me. Everyone was excited to finally know my mysterious house. "It's no big deal. Please lower your expectations," I said in a severe tone, but I couldn't stop smiling. "But my mother is really nice." The big night was the next Saturday. Both Mom and I spared no efforts to make the house look and smell good. Lacey was using a new dress, nothing too fancy, but she looked stunning. Victoria and Mark, my two best friends, looked very neat too. The three of them had bought my mother a box of chocolates to thank her for the invitation. The dinner went very well. I could see my mother was happy to finally know my friends, and most importantly, my girlfriend. "Nick can't stop talking about you, Lacey, but I thought he was exaggerating about your beauty," Mom laughed. I was in a room full of the people I cared for the most in this world. I couldn't be happier. Mom excused herself around 3 hours after the meal started. "I know I shouldn't, but I bought you kids a few beers." She winked, sounding perfectly normal in her human form, then turned to Mark. "Please don't drink and drive, okay? If you need, we have a few sleeping bags." We didn't have them before. She went through all the trouble to buy it online, so my friends would feel welcome. Thank you, Amelia, they all echoed, as she had asked to be treated on a first-name basis. She rarely had the chance to be called Amelia, and just then I realized I'd never asked my mother how she felt about being whatever she was. I just accepted her, and assumed she accepted herself as well. She kissed my forehead. I love you, son. Thank you for bringing such nice people to our house. With that, she locked her bedroom door. We decided to hang out by the outer fence of our property. The moon was beautiful that night, and the cool breeze smelled of Queens of the Night. We had a few beers and talked, and generally had a good time, until a car stopped with screeching tires. Everything was too sudden and scary to make sense of it. "There you are, you little whore!" A guy, a little older than us, but way taller and more intimidating, got out of the driver's seat, immediately grabbing Lacey by the arm. 3 more guys that looked just as dangerous followed. My mind racing, I realized he was her ex-boyfriend. Both Mark and I irrationally opted to fight. Victoria, always the nimble one of our little group, ran back to the house to call the police. She quickly climbed the fence and one of the guys tried to follow her, but from the sound you could tell he was slowed down by the chickens. Victoria and the chickens are part of the reason why I'm alive. While a portion of my brain was paying attention to Victoria, I was being mercilessly punched in the face and doing my best not to swallow my loosened teeth. At least I was still on my feet, while Mark was being kicked on the ground. Most of my attention was focused on Lacey. I knew I had to immediately get rid of this Goliath punching me to prevent her from being hurt. She clearly didn't have the physical strength to fight back, and her cries pierced through my heart. Mark was crying too, his left leg bending at an unnatural angle, and I realized I was crying as well. When the guy beating me finally shoved me to the floor, I knew it was over. I knew awful things would happen to the girl I loved and to my dear friends. "I'm sorry you'll wake up 3 days from now to find me dead, Mom," I muttered. It was hard, considering how many teeth I had lost already. Maybe it was more a thought than anything else. Everything hurt, and everything was stained in my blood. I don't know how much time had passed, but I was being mercilessly, relentlessly, and brutally beaten. One of my eyes was already swollen to the point where I couldn't open it, and I felt like my brain was about to give up and turn off. I can't put into words the desperation I felt when Lacey's screams weren't coming from a place I could see anymore. I wish I could say I had a moment of clarity, and my love and anger drove me to successfully fight back. But that's not how it works. I was still physically weak, and no amount of feeling could miraculously change that. The fact that I was still alive and conscious after being so severely beaten was a surprise, and the best my body and mind could offer. It came like a warm wind, and in a single moment, something impossible happened. It was something spherical, but if I was to be precise, its shape still hadn't been invented. It was somewhat dark green, but it was an impossible color. I was sure my brain could not understand its real tone. It had something that resembled round cameras all over its body, but saying this is putting it too simply. It revolved around itself like electrons orbiting their atom, but it was still. It was the most stagnant thing I ever saw. It shone with nothingness and greatness. It had 2 terrible, sickly, elongated human eyes in what appeared to be the top and front of its body, like antennae. It was clearly weakened and upset at the moment. The scream of Mark's tormentor cut the night as his body broke in half. He simply snapped in 2, bones and viscera creating an immense wet crack, then being flung out of his body. One of the camera-like structures of the impossible creature sucked his lower half inside, while the top half was still screaming in shock and pain. I won't say it didn't feel good. After that, the guy that had chased Victoria inside the property came running back. With a movement invisible to my eye, the creature shoved him to the ground. Then it spoke inside my mind.
"I'll deal with this one later."
Its body oozed. It's still far from the right word to describe it. in my direction. Using one of the antennae to coil around my aggressor's body, the other one caught Lacey's ex-boyfriend with indescribable speed, and the middle parts of the twin structures deliberately, inch by inch, squeezed the Goliaths, while the slender tips entered their noses. It talked to me telepathically again.
I'm quickly losing control. Grab your friends and leave, Nick.
I painfully got up and limped to my girlfriend. Her beautiful face was red and purple. Her clothes were tattered, but she was alive and conscious and could limp along with me. Victoria showed up, clearly the less injured of us, and hung Mark's wilting body over her small back, carrying him slowly. Your mother, Nicholas. She heard me and she... Yes, I know. We silently lay on our backs in the moist grass of my yard and listened to the macabre symphony of well-deserved, excruciating pain. The moon was indeed beautiful that night. After that, I never saw my mom again. Her body got too weak from pretending to be human, and she used the last of her strength to save us. When the police arrived, they found no traces of the massacre that had happened a few minutes earlier. There were only 4 teenagers in shambles. I don't know how I managed for the next few months. I was a mess, both physically and emotionally. Victoria, Lacey, and I were all seriously bruised and with at least one broken bone. Mark was the one in the worst condition, but he made it. Unfortunately, he will be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and quite understandably, he cut us off from his life. I feel so guilty that Victoria and Mark were dragged into this, but she still stayed by my side and took care of me like a devoted sister. I don't know if she simply felt too bad because I had nobody else, or if she truly cared this much about me. We're still best friends. Lacey had to stay in the hospital for longer, and her beautiful face will forever carry the traces of violence she suffered for rejecting a dangerous asshole. But she is still the most perfect thing in the world to me. The years passed as happily as they could with the losses I suffered that night. Lacey and I have been living together ever since we finished high school, and will soon get officially married. At least, I hope she will still take me after I notice there's been a small pair of antennae growing on my forehead. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. If you would like to submit a story, you can do so to storiesofdarkness55@gmail.com. And as always, pleasant dreams.